Don't be an emotional sponge. Don't be an emotional sponge is the topic of the week. That's been coming up for me. Friends, family, colleagues, this conversation has been happening, which is where do we draw the line between what is somebody else's business and what is our business? Another way of saying that is overtaking responsibility, being over responsible for someone and finding that line. And so since we're all purpose-driven entrepreneurs, we care. We actually care about the person. We actually want them to succeed, to be happy, to be healthy. So the thing that we can run into, or it's harder for us than it is other people, is finding that line. Whereas, what is on somebody else's plate and what is on our plate? And how this can show up is that everybody's got different challenges that they have in their life. They have different issues. They have different things that they're growing through. So if we're just overstepping the line, taking over responsibility for everything that goes on in their life, then naturally that is out of balance. So this has come up where, let's say, sales. It can happen in sales or leadership or joint ventures. These are all ways where we can get out of balance. And let's take a look at each of these one by one, because they can show up in mastermind groups, where being an emotional sponge, you take on all the stuff of them. And in terms of like sales, it's like, say they have different challenges or things that they're going through, but it's their life, still their life. And they need to be the captain of their own life. They need to be the captain of their own ship. So we can support and empower and guide them, but we can't go in and change the course of their own ship because it's their life. And yes, we have incredibly powerful tools and techniques and coaching and are able to create breakthroughs. And if we're doing it for them when they're not doing it for themselves, then of course it's a totally different energy. It's off balance. And this hits home, I believe, for purpose-driven entrepreneurs. Like, boom, that's going to hit us differently than people who are just not connected like that. Sure, they're running a business. Sure, they're doing transactions. They want to, do good by their customers. But it's totally different thing when a person's heart is into it. So number one, it hits deeper with that. Number two, if you are an empath, you have empathic tendencies, if you're able to connect with energy, then, and if you feel people's emotions, if you feel the emotions that people are feeling, if you feel those emotions in your own body, then this hits home even harder because you're taking in their energy, you're feeling what they feel. This is how it is for me. So it's a very important thing to draw that line of like, oh no, this is their stuff, not my stuff. Can still guide, but I'm not responsible for their life, their actions, even their emotions. And so this also comes up in leadership as well, as leading your team, your mastermind group, the people around you, is what is that line between empowering somebody and doing it for them? Because if we do it for them, if we just take over the reins and just let me do it type energy, that's disempowering for somebody. And so it's a fine line. It's a fine line to find that boundary with certain tasks, with certain periods of life. And it's like this story of the story of, like, say you have a child where you say, hey, can you clean up, can you sweep this up, and they start sweeping it up, but all of a sudden you look over and they're not sweeping it to your standards, and you go, you know what, let me do it. If you want it done, you just got to do it yourself, and you rip it out and you just start sweeping away, and there you go, sweep for the next 10 minutes, and they are just standing there watching you. Did they really learn how to sweep from that? No. As opposed to being the guide that says, all right, here, let me show you a few things that you can do, show them, and then pass off the broom to them. They do it some more and maybe give some notes, but they learn how to do it on their own. So this is a thing that can be hard to find, that boundary, that line between overtaking responsibility and empowering in terms of leadership. And then in joint ventures, this is coming up too, where there's collaborations between, say, your mastermind group, your team, other teams, other mastermind groups, and what is that line of balanced exchange where it's super awesome for both, rather than one side overtaking responsibility for the other. And the reason why I have the sponge up here that hopefully can be a reminder for you is, I think for me, and as I was speaking with mastermind member earlier this week, I think the hardest point for me is that I'll feel the emotions of others. I'll want them to succeed so much. I'll have the experience to jump in and do it. But really, I think the thing that's been for me is to let me just clear out those emotions first, recognize like what belongs to me, what belongs to that other person. And then it's easier to actually see. It's almost like that fog is dissolved, able to start seeing, where is the boundary between what's mine to do and what's theirs to do. So this is what we'll do today, is clear away any resistance, any fog, any confusion on where are the appropriate boundaries for yourself and others. And I feel like this is a big unlock for scaling. That's what I personally feel like, because if we don't have this, then we can only grow to such level. We have a strong ceiling capping our growth, capping what our mastermind members can do, because ultimately it still all falls on us to do it all, to emotionally be in charge of all, instead of empowering people, just like a sports team. It's like you literally can't play every position. So in this case, empowering everybody to play each position, work together as a team. So don't be an emotional sponge is the message for me, and perhaps that resonates with you too. Is there anybody who'd like to share on what resonated for you on this message? What's one thing that's feeling relevant for you this week? Maybe it isn't a sales conversation. Maybe it isn't a leadership conversation or joint venture collaboration conversation. Finding that line between what is theirs to do, what's yours to do, feeling balanced, and not be an emotional sponge.